When my best friend Jake died in a car accident, it felt like my world split in two. There was the before, when we were inseparable, laughing, living, dreaming together. And then there was the after, a hollow, suffocating emptiness where guilt and grief clawed at me every single day. I kept telling myself it wasn't my fault. But deep down, I couldn't stop replaying that last moment we had together. What if I had stopped him? What if I had said something, anything, to keep him from getting behind the wheel that night? A week after the funeral, I decided to go through Jake's belongings. I needed something to hold on to, something to keep him alive in my memory. Among the stacks of old books, faded photographs, and dusty cassette tapes, I found a notebook. It was worn, the edges frayed, filled with his childhood drawings and scribbled notes. Some were barely legible, others written with the kind of urgency only Jake had, like he was afraid the idea would slip away if he didn't get it down fast enough. And then, tucked between the pages, I found it. A folded piece of paper. Jake's handwriting was unmistakable. Don't look for me, but if you do find me, don't let go. That night I dreamed of Jake. I was standing on an empty road, the kind we used to drive down late at night just talking about life. The air was thick with mist, and the silence was so heavy it felt like it was pressing down on me. In the distance, I saw a figure. It was him, Jake. His posture was relaxed, like he was waiting for me, but his face was blurred, like the mist was swallowing him whole. His lips were moving, like he was saying something, but I couldn't hear him. I called out to him, my voice breaking the stillness. "Jake!" But he didn't respond. He just kept staring at me, his lips moving, his eyes locked on mine. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. And then, my phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. My hand trembled as I reached for it, hesitation freezing me in place. But some gut feeling, made me answer. "Hello?" There was a pause, just long enough to make me wonder if it was a prank, and then, "Hey, you haven't forgotten me, have you?" It was Jake. My blood turned to ice. My heart stopped. "Jake?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He chuckled softly, the way he always did when he was trying to lighten the mood. "Yeah, it's me. Who else? This isn't... You can't... Jake, you're..." I couldn't bring myself to say it. "Dead?" he said, his tone casual, like he was talking about the weather. "Yeah, I know. Weird, huh? What's going on?" My voice cracked. "How are you calling me?" "Does it matter?" he said, his tone shifting, growing serious. "I don't have much time. I need you to listen." I gripped the phone tighter, my mind spinning. This had to be a dream, a nightmare, something. "I'm here," I managed. "I'm listening." Jake's voice softened, but there was something eerie about it, something that made my skin crawl. "There are things I need to tell you, but not over the phone. You need to come find me." "Find you?" "Jake, you're gone. You're not... Just listen!" he snapped, his voice sharp enough to make me flinch. "You have the notebook, right? Start there. The answers are in the places we used to go. But whatever you do..." He trailed off, and I heard something in the background. A faint static like whispers layered over each other, growing louder and louder. "Jake?" I said, panic rising in my chest. "Whatever I do." "What?" The line crackled and his voice returned, faint and distant. "Don't let go." The call disconnected. I stared at the phone, the silence in the room deafening. My mind raced, replaying every word, every nuance of his voice. It sounded like Jake, too much like him to be a prank. But how? My eyes fell on the notebook sitting on my desk, the cryptic note still resting between its pages. "Don't look for me. But if you do find me, don't let go." It wasn't just a coincidence. Jake wanted me to follow the trail he'd left. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. My thoughts were consumed by questions. Where did this trail lead? What was waiting for me at the end? And most importantly, what would happen if I found him? I was convinced it was either a dream or a cruel prank. But the voice, Jake's voice, was too real to ignore. It carried the familiar cadence of his speech, a sound etched into my memory. "Jake," I stammered, gripping the phone like it might vanish if I let go. "Is it really you?" "Yes." His tone was calm, but unnervingly hollow, like an echo from somewhere far away. "I need your help." Jake explained that he was stuck. Between what and where, he didn't clarify, but his urgency was unmistakable. "Time's running out," he said. He asked me to go back to our old hideout, a crumbling, abandoned house on the edge of town where we used to play as kids. It had been our fortress, our kingdom, and a safe haven for our secrets. "You'll find what you need there," he said. The line went dead before I could ask him more. I didn't wait. Grabbing my jacket, I drove through the empty streets of our sleepy town, my thoughts racing as fast as the car. By the time I reached the outskirts, the first hints of dawn were creeping over the horizon, casting long shadows across the road. The house looked exactly as it had a decade ago, weathered, sagging, and forgotten by time. Its windows were shattered, the roof partially caved in, but it was still standing, a relic of our childhood adventures. Stepping inside, I was struck by how familiar it all felt. The smell of dust and decay hung heavy in the air. The creaky floorboards groaned under my weight, and the peeling wallpaper still bore faint marks where we'd once scrawled our names. I walked to the wall where we'd made our secret hiding spot, a loose wooden plank behind an old armchair. My hands trembled as I pried it open. Inside was a folded piece of paper. "Do this for me. You know where to go." The words hit me like a lightning bolt. I knew exactly what they meant. Before I realized it, I was running. My feet seemed to move on their own, carrying me to the edge of town, where the forest loomed dark and silent. The familiar path wound through the trees, leading to the clearing where a massive oak tree stood like a sentinel. The oak had been our sanctuary, a place where we hid from the world, burying little treasures beneath its sprawling roots. I knelt before the tree, my breath fogging in the cold air. Digging with my bare hands, I unearthed a small tin box, its metal surface rusted but intact. I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. Inside was Jake's watch, the one he wore every day until the end. Its leather strap was cracked, the face scratched, but it was unmistakable. The hands of the watch were frozen in place. 3:17. I stared at it, my pulse thundering in my ears. The last time I'd seen Jake wearing this watch was the night before the accident. He'd been late to meet me, rushing as usual. And the crash had happened at exactly 3:17. The forest seemed to close in around me, the air heavy with something I couldn't name. Holding the watch, I felt a strange pull, as though it wasn't just an object. It was a tether, a connection to Jake. "Jake," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What does this mean?" The woods remained silent, but a gust of wind rustled the branches overhead. In the distance, I thought I heard his voice, faint and distant. "Don't stop now." I looked back at the watch. It didn't tick, didn't move. But somehow, I knew it wasn't broken. It was waiting. For what? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. Jake was leading me somewhere, and I couldn't let him down. With that watch came the strangest and most unsettling events of my life. Every night, Jake's voice filled the silence, his whispers weaving through my dreams like threads pulling me closer to him. "Find it," he'd say. "One more thing. You're almost there." At first, it felt like a mission, a way to honor him, to hold on to what we'd shared. I scoured every corner of my house, unearthing anything connected to Jake. Old toys from our childhood, faded photographs, even his favorite worn-out t-shirt. Each item I found brought a fleeting sense of relief, as if I were piecing together a puzzle. But the deeper I delved into our past, the darker things became. The shadows in my home began to move. At first, it was subtle, a flicker in the corner of my eye, the sense of being watched, but soon, it was undeniable. One night, as I was sorting through a box of mementos, I saw him. A silhouette stood outside my window, barely visible against the dim light of the street lamp. It was Jake, or something wearing his shape. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. He didn't move, didn't knock, didn't even blink. He just stood there, staring at me. I wanted to run, to hide, but something rooted me in place. When I finally worked up the courage to look again, he was gone. But the feeling remained. The voice in my head, the shadows in my home. It wasn't just Jake's memory haunting me. It was my inability to let go. I'd convinced myself that Jake was reaching out to me, but deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't him calling me back. It was me. I was keeping him here, clinging to the past so tightly that it began to smother my present. His image, his voice, his presence, it grew stronger every day, creeping into every corner of my life. My world became a fractured reflection of what it once was, distorted by my obsession. That night I made my decision. I gathered everything: the watch, the photographs, the toys, the t-shirt. Every piece of Jake that I had unearthed went into a bag. The weight of it felt immense, as though I was carrying not just memories, but something far heavier. I returned to the oak tree under the cover of darkness. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're being watched. I dug a hole beneath the tree, the same spot where we'd buried our childhood treasures. As I placed the bag into the earth, I felt a lump rise in my throat. "This isn't easy for me, Jake," I said aloud, my voice trembling. "But I can't keep you here anymore. I thought I was helping you, but I see it now. I was holding you back, and I was holding myself back too." I pulled the watch from my pocket, its frozen hands still pointing to 3:17. "Goodbye, Jake," I whispered, placing it atop the bag. "You're free now." I covered the hole, pressing the dirt firmly down with my hands. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the usual rustling of leaves and whispers of wind falling silent. And then, as if the earth itself exhaled, a soft breeze swept through the clearing. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest lifted. When I returned home, the change was immediate. The air felt lighter. The shadows in the corners of the room were just that. Shadows. Jake's voice didn't come to me that night, nor any night after. For the first time since his death, I felt peace. Jake wasn't really stuck. He wasn't the one who couldn't move on. It was me. And now, both of us were free.